Here is something almost no one wants to hear. Your emotions are not your friend. They are not a sacred inner compass pointing you toward truth. They are ancient biological alarms built for a world that no longer exists, a world of predators and immediate danger, where a split-second reaction meant survival. That world is gone, but the alarm system is still running full volume inside your skull right now. Think about how many decisions you make purely on how you feel in a given moment. Someone posts a comment that stings, and you fire back words you'll regret by morning. A wave of overwhelm hits, and you quietly abandon a goal you swore you'd finish. Your palms sweat before a presentation, so you talk yourself out of the opportunity that could have changed your career. You are being steered by chemistry, cortisol, adrenaline, and most of the time, you don't even notice the hand on the wheel isn't yours. But the people who thrive have learned that emotion and reaction are not the same thing. They feel exactly what you feel: anger, anxiety, hurt. The difference is, they've trained themselves to live in the gap between the spark and the explosion, and in that gap, they choose. This isn't about becoming numb. It's about becoming the author of your own behavior, instead of a character reacting to whatever life throws at you. Let's start with the cost. Most people never calculate what emotional reactivity actually costs them. They assume it's just being human. Picture this. You're in a meeting, and a colleague challenges your idea in a tone that feels disrespectful. Your pulse spikes. Heat rises in your face. 30 seconds later, you're defending yourself with an edge in your voice that makes the whole room shift in their seats. You just spent your professional credibility on a reaction that lasted less than a minute. Or picture a small disagreement with someone you love. They say something that lands on an old bruise. Instead of staying grounded, you escalate. Old grievances resurface. You say something built specifically to wound, because you're wounded. 10 minutes later, a minor disagreement has become a full rupture that will take days to repair. Here's the part that stings the most. Every time you react, instead of respond, you're training your brain to do it again, deepening a groove that makes the next explosion easier to trigger. And it doesn't stop when the moment ends. The stress chemicals from that reaction linger in your system for hours, quietly poisoning decisions that seem completely unrelated. Chronic reactivity even reshapes the physical architecture of your brain. Research links habitual loss of control to a measurably smaller prefrontal cortex, the exact region responsible for logic and self-control. The more you react, the less equipped you become to do anything but react. But here's the good news. Reactivity is a habit, not a life sentence, and habits can be rebuilt. To understand how, you need to understand why your brain seems determined to sabotage you. Deep in your brain sits a small structure called the amygdala, your internal alarm system, constantly scanning for threats. When your ancestors faced a predator, it flooded their body with adrenaline and prepared them to fight or flee. That instinct saved lives. The problem is, your amygdala cannot tell the difference between a predator and a passive-aggressive email from your boss. It treats criticism and rejection exactly like physical danger. The instant your brain senses a threat, rational thought goes offline. Blood flow shifts away from your prefrontal cortex, the seat of logic, toward the more primitive, reactive parts of your brain. In that moment, you become, quite literally, less intelligent, and your amygdala learns badly. Every reaction gets filed away as proof the situation truly was dangerous, meaning the next similar situation triggers an even faster alarm. This is why someone hurt in love becomes hyper-alert to rejection, why someone criticized once becomes defensive at even gentle feedback. Speed makes it worse. The amygdala can trigger a full emotional response in about 12 milliseconds. Your rational mind needs roughly 40 times longer just to catch up. You are, quite literally, feeling before you're thinking. By the time you notice you're angry, your heart is already racing. But knowing your reactions are automatic doesn't mean you're powerless. It means you can train the system, strengthen your prefrontal cortex to override the alarm. Somewhere between the spark and the explosion, a gap exists, sometimes only milliseconds wide, and that gap is where your power lives. Most people imagine emotional control as a switch. Either you're calm or you're not. That's a myth. In reality, there are 4 levels. The first is unconscious reactivity, where most people spend their entire lives feeling something and acting on it instantly, with zero awareness a choice ever existed. This level makes you unpredictable, and unpredictability quietly erodes every relationship you have. The second is conscious reactivity. You know you're reacting. You know the words about to leave your mouth will cause damage, but you say them anyway because it feels justified. This level is often more frustrating than the first, because you know better yet still can't stop yourself. The third is conscious response, where real mastery begins. You feel the emotion fully, name it, and choose your next move based on your values, not your impulse. You understand that emotions are information, not instructions. The fourth is emotional alchemy, the ability not just to manage an emotion, but to transform it. Anger becomes fuel. Fear becomes focus. Progress through these levels is rarely linear. The question is simply, what level are you operating at right now, and which level are you willing to train toward? When you're mid-reaction, heart pounding, every instinct screaming at you to lash out, you don't need philosophy. You need a system simple enough to run on autopilot, because your rational brain has already gone offline. This is the Stop Me method, 4 steps built on decades of nervous system research. S stands for stop. The moment you notice you're activated, physically halt whatever you're doing. Hands off the keyboard mid-angry email, mouth closed mid-argument. This interrupts the momentum before it becomes irreversible. The skill is catching your body's early warning signs: racing heart, tight jaw, shallow breath before the emotion fully takes the wheel. T stands for take a breath specifically. Box breathing. Inhale through the nose for 4 counts, hold for 4. Exhale through the mouth for 6. This stimulates the vagus nerve, shifting you out of fight or flight and back into a state where clear thinking is possible. Repeat it at least 3 times. O stands for observe. Once your body settles, look honestly at what's happening internally and externally. What's fact versus what's interpretation? Someone doesn't text back, and you assume disrespect, but maybe they're simply busy. Separate what actually happened from the story you built around it, and do this with curiosity, not judgment. P stands for proceed, a conscious choice about how to respond, guided by your values and long-term goals. Sometimes the wisest move is no response yet. Ask yourself, what response actually serves the relationship, the outcome, and the person I'm trying to become? This method gets sharper with repetition. At first, you'll only remember it after you've already reacted. That's still progress. Over time, you'll catch yourself earlier, until eventually you're intercepting the reaction before it fully forms. Once Toppy becomes second nature, you're ready for optimization. The first advanced technique is cognitive reframing, deliberately changing your interpretation of an event to change your emotional response to it. Say you're presenting, and people glance at their phones. Your first instinct, they're bored. But what if they're taking notes? Same event, different emotion. Train yourself to generate 3 interpretations for any triggering situation. 1 negative, 1 positive, 1 neutral, and choose the one that actually serves you. The second technique is emotional labeling, getting precise about naming what you feel. Frustration and disappointment feel similar, but call for different responses. Naming an emotion precisely activates your prefrontal cortex and quiets your amygdala, a neurological reset, not just a mental exercise. The third is somatic regulation, using the body to influence the mind. Progressive muscle relaxation, brief cold exposure, and movement all discharge the physical tension built up during activation. The fourth is timeline reframing. When you're in the grip of a reaction, your brain assumes the crisis is permanent. Ask yourself, how will I feel about this in a day? A year? This instantly shrinks problems back to their real size. Controlling a single reaction is only half the equation. The other half is resilience built, not in the storm, but in calm weather. Sleep is non-negotiable when you're sleep-deprived. Your amygdala runs hot, while your prefrontal cortex goes sluggish. A direct recipe for losing control. Nutrition matters too. Your brain runs on stable blood sugar, and unstable blood sugar means unstable emotions, and movement trains your capacity to stay composed under controlled stress, which transfers directly to staying composed under uncontrolled stress. Beyond the physical, resilience needs cognitive flexibility, the ability to see a situation from more than one angle instead of getting locked into a single rigid interpretation. It needs meaning, a sense of purpose that makes short-term discomfort worth enduring. And it needs the right people around you because, thanks to mirror neurons, your brain quietly mimics the emotional patterns of whoever you spend the most time with. Surround yourself with steadiness, and your nervous system learns steadiness. Surround yourself with chaos, and it learns that instead. This isn't just philosophy, it's measurable biology. Every time you choose a thoughtful response over an automatic reaction, you strengthen the neural circuitry for self-control and weaken the circuitry for reactivity. Regular practice increases gray matter density in your prefrontal cortex, your planning and impulse control center. Meanwhile, the amygdala, your alarm system, actually shrinks with consistent practice, not because you become numb, but because your threat detection becomes more accurate, filtering out false alarms. Most people notice a shift in their own reactivity within 2 to 4 weeks of consistent effort. Visible structural change follows around 8 to 12 weeks. Full transformation of long-standing patterns typically takes 6 months to 2 years. That's not discouraging, it's honest. And once these changes take hold, they become your new baseline, not something you have to fight to maintain. Now let's talk about what happens when the stakes are real. Most people perform worse under pressure because they let the intensity overwhelm their rational thinking. Elite performers get better under pressure because they've trained specifically for these moments. The difference isn't talent, it's preparation. The first key is understanding that pressure is internal, not external. The situation itself is neutral. It only becomes pressurized when your mind interprets it as threatening. Instead of telling yourself, I can't handle this, reframe it, this is exactly the kind of situation I've trained for. The second key is physiological preparation. Stress inoculation. Cold exposure and high-intensity exercise train your nervous system to stay composed while your body is under strain, a skill that transfers directly to emotional pressure. The third key is attention management. Laser focus on the single next action, rather than scattering your mind across every possible outcome. The fourth is process focus over outcome focus. A surgeon focuses on making a precise incision, not on whether the patient survives. You can't control outcomes, but you can control your effort, attention, and technique in focusing. There's what actually improves your results. Now, let's talk about negative emotions themselves, because most people treat them like toxic waste to be disposed of as fast as possible. That's backwards. Every negative emotion is information. Anger tells you something important to you is being threatened. Fear tells you you're facing something that matters. Sadness tells you what you truly value by showing you what hurts to lose. Frustration tells you that you care deeply about progress. The key to transforming anger is separating the energy from the target. Instead of directing it at the person who triggered it, redirect that energy toward constructive action, working harder, solving the problem more aggressively. Some of history's greatest achievements were fueled by transformed anger. Fear, similarly, isn't meant to be eliminated. It's meant to be decoded. You only feel afraid about losing things that matter to you. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's intelligent action taken in its presence. If a goal doesn't scare you a little, it's probably not big enough to be worth pursuing. Real confidence isn't the absence of doubt. It's the quiet certainty that you can handle whatever life throws at you, not because nothing bad will happen, but because you trust your ability to respond wisely when it does. And that kind of confidence can only be built one way: by repeatedly facing difficult situations and proving to yourself that you can handle them. Most people get this backwards. They wait to feel confident before taking action. But confidence isn't a prerequisite for facing challenges. It's the result of facing them. You act despite uncertainty. You handle it better than expected. Your brain updates its assessment of your capabilities, and your confidence grows. Then you're ready for the next challenge, slightly bigger than before. This is why emotional mastery is the foundation of unshakable confidence. When you know you can control your reactions regardless of what happens, when you know you can think clearly, even when emotions run high, you develop an inner certainty that's nearly impossible to shake, because it isn't dependent on external circumstances the way most people's confidence is. Now let's bring this into relationships, because this is where emotional control matters most, and where most people fail most spectacularly. The people who love you see you at your worst, tired, stressed, depleted. This is when your true level of mastery is revealed. The first principle is recognizing that every interaction is a choice between connection and control. When you're reactive, you're choosing control, trying to be right, trying to win. When you choose non-reaction, you're choosing connection, prioritizing the relationship over being right. This doesn't mean tolerating bad behavior. It means responding in a way that preserves dignity and creates the possibility of resolution. The second principle is owning your 50%. You cannot control the other person's words or emotional state, but you have complete control over your own response. When you stop trying to control their half and focus entirely on your own, you become a stabilizing force that actually influences others to be their best selves. The third is de-escalation. When someone raises their voice, the instinct is to match their energy. Strategic non-reaction means doing the opposite, speaking more quietly when they speak loudly, becoming more curious when they become critical. This counterintuitive move often breaks the pattern entirely. And the most powerful relationship tool of all is the pause. In heated moments, there's enormous pressure to respond immediately, but the pause is where your power lives. I need a moment to think about that. Can completely change the trajectory of a conversation and often prevents damage that would otherwise take weeks to repair. This same steadiness becomes leadership the moment other people are watching you. Leadership is fundamentally about emotional influence, not technical skill. People learn far more from what you do than what you say, especially in how you handle setbacks. When you stay calm under pressure, you give everyone around you permission to be calm too. When someone makes a mistake and you respond with curiosity instead of blame, you build an environment where people feel safe enough to be honest, take risks, and grow. Your emotional state is contagious, whether you intend it to be or not, which means every time you walk into a room, you're not just managing yourself, you're setting the tone for everyone in it. None of this works, though, without a system. Knowledge alone doesn't create change, daily practice does. Build 5 to 10 minutes of focused emotional training into every day. A breathing practice to train your nervous system. A few minutes of reflection to spot your patterns, and honest awareness of the environment shaping your emotional baseline. What you consume, who you spend time with, what your physical space communicates. Keep a simple trigger journal for 2 weeks. Notice what activates you, and build a specific, planned response for each pattern before you need it. The highest test of everything you've learned comes in high-stakes environments where careers can be shaken by a single outburst, where relationships can be permanently altered by one reactive moment. In crisis, the person who can think clearly while everyone else is losing their footing becomes the calm center the whole room turns to. But that ability isn't discovered in the crisis. It's built long before it, in the quiet, unglamorous repetition of everything we've covered today. The same applies to negotiation and confrontation. The person who separates their ego from the outcome becomes almost impossible to manipulate or provoke. And it applies to how you handle both your successes and your failures, because both can distort your judgment if you let them. Success can breed arrogance. Failure can breed despair. Neither is a verdict on who you are. Both are simply information about what worked and what didn't. Most people dramatically underestimate what emotional mastery is actually worth, because they only see the immediate effect of a single calm moment, a fight avoided, a relationship preserved. But like compound interest, the real value builds quietly across years. Every time you respond instead of react, you make a small deposit into the trust others place in you. Over time, that trust becomes a reputation the person others turn to during difficult moments, because they know you won't add to the chaos. That same steadiness compounds into better decisions across every domain of your life: the relationships you choose, the career moves you make, the way you handle conflict. It compounds into your health, because chronic emotional reactivity creates chronic stress, and chronic stress quietly shortens your life. When you regulate your emotional state, you sleep better, think more clearly, and carry less physical wear from the inside out. It compounds into how fast you learn, because energy that isn't spent managing emotional fallout is energy available for growth. And it compounds into opportunity, because people consistently choose to build with those who stay composed under pressure. Every door that opens because of this reputation tends to lead to another. But perhaps the deepest compound effect is simply this: peace. Not the absence of difficulty, but the quiet confidence that you can meet whatever difficulty arrives. External circumstances will always be temporary. Your capacity to respond to them with wisdom is something you get to keep. This is what it means to become anti-fragile, not just surviving hardship, but growing stronger because of it. Every difficult moment becomes practice. Every difficult person becomes, without meaning to, a teacher. When you reach this level, you don't become unshakable, because nothing hard ever happens to you again. You become unshakable because you've stopped doubting your own ability to handle whatever does. The choice in front of you is simple, even if it isn't easy. You can keep living at the mercy of whatever chemical reaction fires first, letting a 60-second feeling make decisions that echo for years. Or you can begin the patient work of building the gap, the small, quiet space between what happens to you and what you choose to do about it. That gap is where every version of the life you actually want gets built. Not tomorrow, when things feel calmer. Not next month, when the timing feels right. Now, because the version of you who starts today is always further ahead than the version who waits for a better moment that never quite arrives.